everyone, this is my second video in the Hwangana Storyline series. I put the first video up, I don't even remember how long ago it was, but the first video talked about the Smeraldo story, and I will link that below if you haven't seen it yet. I actually meant to film this video quite a while ago, but I had some health issues. I had like a procedure done where it was like hard to move for a couple weeks afterwards. Like I'm fine now, but it's just I couldn't really walk all that great, so I missed like a week of work. And yeah, so I'm tired, and I have no excuse to be tired because I took like 2 weeks to recuperate and just now filming. But yeah, here I am up against my messy shelf that needs to be reorganized, and my back hurts already. Anyway, I have a script for this one, much like the last one. It is front and back, 6 pages, so it's actually 12 pages. So I'm probably going to read off of this script because I have not memorized it. I haven't even looked at this script in the last like 2.5, 3 weeks because I had the thing done and all sorts of stuff was happening. So I'm probably going to have to look at this a lot, and I apologize because I'm going to be looking down. And I could just edit a video essay like I said in the first video, but I don't know how effective that would be, especially since I'd have to take a lot of screen captures from the Webtoon, and it won't let you take screenshots. Or I guess maybe sometimes it does, but I don't know. It was kind of hard to edit that together with like copyright content. So I'm just going to sit in front of the camera again and read off my script, and hopefully the next video I will have it more memorized than this one, but you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. So anyway, like I said, this is the second video in the series. The first one covered the Smeraldo story, and I anticipate there being at least 2 more videos. And basically this is just me, summarizing the story and kind of talking about it, and I'm linking this video with a blog post that I've written already, so you can read the blog post on the btseffect.com, or you can watch the video, whatever's easier. And it's basically sort of a guide for people who are new to the Bangtan universe storyline, or people who just didn't really get into it when it came out. So yeah, this is going to be a summary and a little mini discussion of the Save Me webtoon, and there will be more of this, like I said, on the website. And the next 2 videos should be the actual like Hwangana Notes storyline, I guess. It's going to be kind of weird because of time travel and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I wanted to cover the webtoon in a separate video because there are 15 episodes of the webtoon, so it's kind of a lot. I mean, it doesn't take that long to read, so I do recommend reading it if you have the chance, but I will summarize it here. And at first, this will obviously contain spoilers, so if you are not okay with that, you probably shouldn't watch this. But anyway, in case you're brand new to all of this, I will provide a little bit of background information. So Save Me is the Hwangana webtoon, some people call it that. The title is Save Me. It's 15 episodes, and it's a webtoon that Big Hit released back in April. Actually, it was this year, so 2019 April. And the webtoon was announced on Twitter on that Smeraldo Books account, and it's currently available for free on the Naver Webtoon app and on the website. So I think you can access it on the computer as well. You don't have to be on your phone to read it, but it's available in a lot of different languages too, so you don't have to read it in English or in Korean. It's a lot of languages. The Hwangana story of the Bangtan universe features 7 main characters, and I don't remember if I talked about this much in the last video, but it's kind of obvious because 7 BTS members, 7 main characters. And of course, each character is named after a BTS member, so even though we've got all 7 main characters, the Hwangana storyline does focus more so specifically on Seokjin's character, and he's more so the protagonist, at least throughout this Save Me storyline, and the webtoon follows him and his actions, and so he's really the only one that we have a lot of insight to in this specific story. Now the Hwangana notes give us insight to all the other characters, but Save Me is basically just from Seokjin's point of view. So this webtoon was released after we already had quite a bit of information from the Hwangana notes and music videos and other related videos like the highlight reels. And Hwangana notes, like those are those little packets that come in the Love Yourself albums, and they also came with the Persona album, so we can assume the next 2 albums are going to have it as well. And since we already have some content but we don't have the full story, it was a little bit difficult at first to place the webtoon, but now that the entire webtoon has been released, it's much easier to understand where it falls within the context of this larger story. So although the Hwangana storyline actually begins in year 9, the Save Me webtoon is set in year 22. and the number of the year actually corresponds to Seokjin's age at the time of the story. And from his age, we can assume the other characters' ages as well if we assume real world, relatability with that. So leading up to year 22, we have the Hwangyeona note entries from all the characters. And so there is some backstory there, but I'm not going to get into it right now. I think it's fine to start with the webtoon first and then go back and read all the Hwangyeona notes. So the main thing you need to know is that there is a backstory that takes place before this webtoon, but the webtoon provides the first timeline that occurs in year 22. And what I mean by that is, like, this is what happens originally to this group of friends after they go their separate ways and before Seokjin begins to interfere with time. So Save Me tells the story of when he first enters the time loop, and this is also supported by the 0 that appears next to the Save Me logo in the webtoon. The Hwangyeona Notes book has a 1 in its logo, and so that leads me to believe that, like, that's events that occur in timelines after the Save Me webtoon. So Save Me's placement at the rising action near the middle of the story is consistent with BTS's content, often starting in media res, and that means in the middle rather than at the beginning. So we have seen this before if you think about, like, the albums where, Red Bullet Part 2, well, albums and tours, I guess, Red Bullet Part 2 came first, and then Part 1 came, and then Part 3 came, and it was also like this with Her and Euphoria, because Her came out before Euphoria did, even though Euphoria was technically before Her in the timeline. And with that, Giseung Jungyeol thing, it was all, in order. So Euphoria actually came out after Her did, which is not chronological. So getting into the actual webtoon, I'm going to summarize the story and of each episode of the webtoon and also mention some cross-references. So if you are familiar, then you can, like, cross-reference with me like I do on the website, because it helps make a lot more sense. So the prologue is basically setting up all the bad things that happen in year 22. We see Taeyang backing away from a broken bottle with blood on his hands. Namjoon sits in jail, and Jungkook is walking along the edge of a rooftop. And Hosuk falls down the stairs while in a hospital gown, and Yoongi is in a room that's on fire. Jimin sits alone in a hospital room, and Seokjin stands in front of a window with white shades, which he opens and sees himself reflected. Right away, we can link some of these images to other media that we've seen, such as Taeyang's scene in I Need You music video and Jungkook in Euphoria. And there's also footage of Jimin and Hosuk in a hospital room in the Run music video. And we've also seen Seokjin with the window in I Need You and his short film called Awake. And just a side note, I'm probably going to mispronounce names, even though I know the right way to say it, because I can't English and Korean at the same time. So I apologize if I confuse you with that. I'm going to try really hard not to. Anyway, episode 1. Seokjin is on the airplane from LA to Incheon, and an important part of the backstory here is that earlier in the Hwangyeona notes, Seokjin leaves Korea and goes to live with his maternal grandparents in LA for a while. He says he's been gone for 2 years. He left in July or August of year 20, so it's not quite 2 years, but almost 2 years. He wakes up in a room with the window that we see in the prologue, and notes that he doesn't really feel at home even though he hasn't been gone all that long. He leaves the house and we see him driving the truck, and we've seen that truck in music videos too. And we learn that it's April 11th from the radio broadcast as he's driving. So he drives past the old high school and he sees Jungkook in the crowd of students. And that causes him to have a flashback, and he remembers when they were all in school together and the teacher had fussed at them for being late on the first day of school, so they all get detention and they have to clean a storage classroom together. In the Hwangyeona notes, this storage classroom actually becomes their hideout, and as he's remembering how they spent, like, all this time together in the storage classroom, cars are honking at him to go, so he leaves and he ends up at the gas station where he sees Namjoon and through one of his mirrors, but he doesn't talk to him. So that's also, we've seen the gas station before in videos too. And a bit later in the story, Seokjin has a dream where he's floating in water and all of the other guys are floating ahead of him with their eyes closed, and he reaches out to them, but he can't reach them, and he wakes up. We're shown that the date is now May 22nd, so he's been living his own life for a little over a month, having come back from LA, and he wonders if he should have talked to his friends when he saw them previously, but he doesn't. So Seokjin decides to try, and he goes back to the gas station where he saw Namjoon working, He asks the other worker who is there about him, but he says that Namjoon isn't there that day. And when Seokjin presses further, the worker tells him that Namjoon's actually in jail. And in the background, we can see a TV screen with a news broadcast about a high schooler being arrested for killing his own father. And if you're familiar with the Hwang and a storyline at all, then you know that's actually referencing Taeyang's character rather than Namjoon. And so Seokjin goes to visit Namjoon and then is given in jail, and he's given 10 minutes to talk to him. And he explains how he found him and he offers to help him, but Namjoon tells him that there's just nothing he can do. And Namjoon explains through a flashback what happened and how a rude customer was berating him for being poor, and Namjoon just lost it and he punched the guy. And they go to the police station to file a report. The officer tries to get the guy to settle since he's not actually hurt, he's just upset and angry about it. And the customer laughs and wonders if Namjoon can even afford to pay a settlement. And Namjoon refuses to settle, just sort of out of pride and because he can't pay a settlement, and that lands him in jail. So Seokjin recalls that this happened on April 11th, and that's the same day he first saw Namjoon at the gas station and didn't speak to him. So Seokjin asks how everyone else is doing, but Namjoon says he doesn't keep in touch with them. And Namjoon drops the real bombshell after that, and we learn that both Jungkook and Yoongi are dead, and Hoseok's in the hospital after a bad accident, and Namjoon doesn't know what happened to Jimin or Taeyang. And so Seokjin is really shaken up at this news, but he also has to leave because visiting time is over. So he leaves and he wonders if he should have talked to Namjoon the first time he saw him because maybe he wouldn't have ended up in jail. And then he sees a crowd of reporters shouting questions at someone, and they're asking if this person really murdered his father. And Seokjin realizes that it's Taeyang, and he's walking in a line of criminals with rope tied around his body and his wrists, like the rest of the criminals. And he calls out, and Taeyang turns to look at him, but there's nothing that Seokjin can do because he's already being arrested. And so Seokjin goes to the beach alone, and he thinks about how happy they all used to be. He says that they used to be happy just being together with each other, but now everyone is miserable. And as he's wondering about this, he's just lost in thoughts. A white cat appears and seems to speak to him. And if you look at the webtoon, it's got little call out chat bubbles, like it's actually talking. And it says, if you could turn back time, do you believe you can straighten out the errors and mistakes and save everyone? And Seokjin looks at the cat and wonders if he's just seeing things, but he confirms that he'd do anything to make everyone happy. And after this, there's a sort of graphic effect in the webtoon, and it looks like a mirror is shattering. And Seokjin wakes up in his room thinking it was all just a dream. His phone shows the date of April 11th, and every time something goes wrong, Seokjin gets sent back to April 11th, and we see the shattering effect in the graphic depiction of the webtoon. So that's like the clue that this is going back in time. So after that, well, actually, before we go on to episode 2, I just want to talk about the cat that I just mentioned. Originally, we weren't sure what this creature was when it first came out because only its back half is seen, and we never see its full body. And the only full body shot that we really see, it has its head turned as it's looking to Seokjin, and so we can't really make out what it is. And so a lot of people thought maybe this was a gumiho or a kitsune. It's like a fox spirit. It's true it could have made sense with the storyline because, just from episode 1, we see that Seokjin goes back in time, and that's something that's like associated with kitsune sometimes. But it didn't really look like a fox, at least to me, and I always wondered if it was supposed to be a cat or something else, and so now we know it is a cat. But anyway, so because Big Hit released those Hwanghyuna art toys, if you saw those on the official shop, they're just basically little figurines that match the Hwanghyuna characters, and Seokjin's character actually comes with a little fluffy white cat, and it even says so in the description of the item that it's a cat. So it's confirmed that it's a cat. We just don't know anything about it, like to this day. We know nothing about it. We don't know how it does this thing where it makes people time travel, I guess. So no explanation there yet, but at least we know it's a cat, I guess. So I'm not aware personally of any legends or myths where cats time travel, though there appears to be some people on the internet, because I did look it up, some people on the internet believe that cats are interdimensional beings. That doesn't seem to be a super common belief, just based on me looking around on the internet. That's not really something that's common, but I mean, it's possible that could be the point here, but it's also possible that Big Hit just created this cat character to serve its purpose of time travel for some reason. We won't know yet, I guess, but yeah, the purpose of the cat and its true nature have not been revealed officially in any Hwangana material. So in episode 2, Seokjin leaves the gas station without saying hi to Namjoon, and he wonders whether he should have, and suddenly his truck screeches to a stop. A body has actually fallen on top of his hood, and he recognizes that it's Jungkook, and he's clearly dead, so Seokjin starts to panic. Everything goes blurry and everything shatters again, that effect with the graphics, and so Seokjin wakes up again in his room saying he had a dream, but he doesn't remember it. And he looks at a photo of him and the others that they took on the beach dated June 12th. This picture appears in a Hwangana note from book 1, and it's in Jungkook's entry dated June 12th, year 19. Seokjin misses them and wonders how they are and notes that something is strange, but he just doesn't know what. So Seokjin drives towards the school again. We learn it's April 11th once again, and he sees Jungkook there with other students, and his heart starts to race like it did when his body had landed on the car. He wonders what's happening, but he hears the cars honking again, and so he just drives off, and he doesn't remember what happened. At the gas station, Seokjin leaves again without speaking to Namjoon. He drives away feeling like he forgot something, and he stops near a convenience store where a cop car passes, and he starts to walk along the sidewalk. And suddenly Jungkook falls to the pavement behind him, and Seokjin turns to see him dead again. Again, everything shatters. So another speech bubble that resembles the one that appeared next to the cat appears again in a different color, and it reads, "Am I too late? You could have been the one I was looking for. If you've already sealed the pact, open your eyes and see straight." And Seokjin gets up and he shouts at the voice, "Who are you?" And those unique speech bubbles appear again, and it reads, "This is the world you have to live in and the fate you must go through. You won't make it out here alone in this entangled destiny. Here's how to remember the loop once you open your eyes." And it trails off. Everything shatters again, and Seokjin seems to recall memories of everything up to this point. So he remembers Namjoon in jail, Taeyang being arrested, and Jungkook dying, and he also recalls the first time the voice spoke to him, which appears in blue text instead of yellow. I don't know if that has a meaning or not. Seokjin stands in his room trying to process what's happening. He doesn't have a clue, but he knows that the voice was different from last time, and then he realizes that the days seem to be repeating themselves. So in episode 3, Seokjin goes to the gas station once again, wondering if he can make everything right. And this time he greets Namjoon in a scene that we've seen before at the end of the Blood, Sweat, and Tears Japanese music video. Seokjin tells Namjoon that he just got back, and Namjoon has to go help another customer, and it ends up being the rude guy who throws money at him, but this time Seokjin steps in to prevent Namjoon from fighting the guy, and the guy just ends up leaving. So we've seen this happen in Hwangana notes from Answer in Seokjin's entry dated April 11th, year 22, and Namjoon awkwardly thanks Seokjin. Seokjin asks him if he keeps in touch with Jungkook, and Namjoon says he doesn't, so Seokjin knows he must find him before the day ends because he knows that he's gonna die if he doesn't, so he starts to rush off, and Namjoon wants to ask questions, but Seokjin tells him that they should all go to the beach when they meet again, and he rushes off, and Namjoon's just really confused and just stands there. So Seokjin goes around looking for Jungkook, but he can't find him. He's not at home. He's supposed to be at school, but he's not there either, and so he remembers the building that Jungkook went to from previous days, and he tries to find it. So Namjoon is walking around when he spots Jungkook by chance. He calls out to him, but he can't cross the street, and the light changes until the light changes, and so when it does, he crosses, but then Jungkook's nowhere to be seen. So Seokjin is in the vicinity of the building where he thinks Jungkook is at. He rushes up to the roof, and Jungkook isn't there, and he wonders if he can really trust his memories. So episode 4 starts off with Jungkook walking alone and coming across some punks on the street. They go after him and they beat him up, and that's something that we've seen in the I Need You music video. And this scene also appears in a Hwangana note from her, and it's his entry dated April 11th, year 22. Seokjin realizes he's not at the right building, and so as Jungkook is climbing the ledge at another building, Seokjin realizes this, and so that's a scene from the Euphoria music video as well as from Hwangana notes in Her and Answer, and they're both dated April 11th, year 22. So Namjoon sees Jungkook from the street below and he calls out to him, but Jungkook stumbles and actually starts to fall. And Seokjin catches him just in time, and he tells him that he looked for him all day, asks him why he was out there alone, and that phrase triggers a memory for Jungkook where his mother asks him the same thing and tells him not to worry his father. and it's clear from that memory that it's not, like the flashback, it's not a good memory. And it's also from the Hwayongyana notes we know that Jungkook's father walked out on him and his mother when he was 7, and his stepfather and stepbrother don't really care about him. So part of this is established in the book, and it's also seen in the note from her dated April 11th, year 22. And Seokjin asks him again, like, what he's doing there. Jungkook won't answer and just tells him no reason. Namjoon comes running up there with them, and then Jungkook's phone rings, and it's Yoongi. The scene shifts to show Yoongi's phone with several unanswered calls that he had called Jungkook, and he flicks a lighter on and off as he sits in a motel room, which is a scene from the I Need You music video. And in his mind, he sees himself as a young boy and a burning piano. So in episode 5, we pick back up with Seokjin asking Jungkook why he was on the roof, and he just brushes it off. Namjoon says, Namjoon asks what happened to his face, and he lies and says he bumped, because Jungkook has like a mark on his face, and so he asks what happened to his face, and he lies and says that he bumped into a wall. Actually, he got beat up in the street. And Seokjin asks Jungkook if his parents wouldn't be worried that he's out late, but he just doesn't respond. And then his phone rings, and it's Yoongi. And then in the next scene, Jungkook, Seokjin, and Namjoon rush to the emergency room. It looks like someone called Jungkook from Yoongi's phone and to let him know that Yoongi was injured. They watch as the doctors work on Yoongi, who has burn marks and an oxygen mask. So Yoongi starts to code, and the doctors try to shock him back to life, but he flatlines. And as they watch him die, everything shatters again. So after that, like, it shatters, and Seokjin wakes up in his room, starts the day over, and it's clear he understands now that he has to repeat this day until he gets it right. And so the scene with Jungkook about to get beaten up starts again, but this time Seokjin grabs him by the hood, pulls him into an alley. He tells him and Namjoon to stay put. They're both confused as to what's going on, but Seokjin runs off, and Namjoon asks if Jungkook keeps in touch with Yoongi, and then Namjoon's phone rings, and the other person on the line says something about the police. So after that, it cuts to Seokjin going to a motel to ask for Yoongi, but the woman at the front desk won't give him any information. And when he says that Yoongi might set the hotel on fire, then she suddenly starts to pay attention. Namjoon and Jungkook go to the police station to pick up Taeyong, and Namjoon asks if he kept in touch with Yoongi since Seokjin seems to be looking for him. Taeyong says he's seen Yoongi, but it was in his dreams. And at the same moment, a group of policemen rush by, saying something about a suspected arsonist, which we know is probably Yoongi. So episode 6 starts out with Seokjin and the motel employee. They're watching security footage trying to find Yoongi. They don't find him, and Seokjin looks out the window to see a different motel across the street burning, and everything shatters again. So Seokjin starts April 11th once again and tries something different. He goes after Jungkook when he sees him at school, immediately asking him if he keeps in touch with Yoongi. And Yoongi recalls the last time Jungkook recalls the last time he spoke to Yoongi, where Yoongi was lying down, seemingly depressed, telling Jungkook just to get lost. But Jungkook doesn't tell this to Seokjin. And he admits that he has seen Yoongi, and Seokjin puts him in the truck where Namjoon and Taeyong already are. So he's already collected 2 of them, and he's putting them all in the truck. So they're driving to the part of town where Jungkook says he last saw Yoongi, and Taeyong interjects to say that this isn't the place where he saw Yoongi in his dream. We find out in the Hwayongyana notes that Taeyong has several recurring nightmares about previous iterations of time, such as Yoongi and Jungkook both dying. It's not clear how he retains these memories, but it does happen in the Hwayongyana notes. So as Seokjin wonders why Yoongi's location keeps changing every time he lives this day, when the other locations of the other guys don't really change, a different truck skids on the road, and it's right in front of them, and Seokjin cannot stop in time, and they crash head on. It appears that the others are either dead in the car or extremely injured, and Seokjin is the only one barely conscious, and he thinks it's all his fault. So he says the future keeps changing because he keeps changing the past, and then everything just shatters again. So Seokjin wakes up in his room once again, this time drawing a map and trying to strategize how to save everyone. He plans it out exactly, and thinking that if he does it just right, he can save everyone, but he'll soon learn that it won't matter. So the next scene shows that Seokjin has saved Jungkook had him call Yoongi, who is at a restaurant drinking. He answers and Seokjin asks him where he is, but Yoongi hangs up and ignores him. He ignores future calls as well. He seems to recall his father yelling at him about music and the piano, saying that he's like his mother and that if he wants to kill himself like she did, then go right ahead. And Yoongi ends up back at the motel with his lighter, and he lights a piece of composition paper on fire and drops it into some spilled alcohol, causing a larger fire to start. So in episode 7, there's a flashback to Yoongi playing the piano in high school in the storage classroom, and Jungkook comes in and lies down on some desks. A teacher finds them and he slaps Jungkook, knocking him down, and Yoongi steps in between them. And after this, there's a notice of expulsion for Yoongi dated June 25th. We see this scene occur in the Hwayongyana notes as well, in a her entry for Jungkook dated June 25th, year 20. And we also learn from the Hwayongyana notes that Yoongi got expelled because of Seokjin. So Seokjin was pressured by the principal to report any wrongdoings of any of the other kids, and Seokjin told him about the storage classroom, thinking that no one was there. But of course, Yoongi and Jungkook were in there, and Yoongi gets expelled because of it, and no one knows that Seokjin did this. So Seokjin sees smoke coming from a motel that he's driving by, and so he runs in and breaks down the door with a fire axe. He carries Yoongi out, and Yoongi seems to faintly recognize that it's Seokjin, but when Yoongi wakes up in the hospital, he blames Seokjin for not leaving him to die, and Seokjin realizes that he thought he had saved him, but it wasn't enough if he wants to die. So later in the Hwayongyana notes, we learn that Seokjin tries to get Jungkook to save Yoongi instead. And a month later, on May 11th, Taeyong runs from the police after drawing graffiti on the wall. He reaches Namjoon's container house, and he goes in asking if he can stay the night. So at the beginning of episode 8, we see Taeyong has a dream that he's submerged in water, much like Seokjin's dream from the beginning of the webtoon. He sees Jimin and he reaches for him, but Jimin is being pulled down by an unknown hand. Taeyong wakes up in Namjoon's container house and asks him where he thinks Jimin is. So in the next scene, we see Jimin is sitting alone in the hospital, and Hoseok appears in the bed next to him and comments that he fell while walking. And we can think of this as a cross-reference to the I Need You music video where Hoseok, he collapses on the bridge, and also the Hwayongyana note from Persona dated May 10th, year 22. He collapses due to narcolepsy, which he supposedly has had since he was young. And Hoseok remembers that he and Jimin last saw each other 2 years ago when Jimin had a seizure at the bus stop. We see scenes of Jimin and Hoseok in the hospital in the Run music video, and there are also Hwayongyana notes from Answer dated May 11th, year 22, and one from the Hwayongyana notes book dated May 12th, year 22. So next we see Jimin overflowing the sink with water and putting his head in. It's not clear exactly what he's doing, but he recalls that flower arboretum, the sign that says flower arboretum, and blood on the floor, and himself as a child running away. He gets scared and struggles, and we see a scene of him submerged in the water being pulled down by an unknown person. And Jimin snaps out of it and takes his head out of the sink. In the Hwayongyana notes, we know that something bad happened to Jimin at the flower arboretum when he's 8 years old, but we have yet to find out exactly what that is. But ever since then, he has had seizures when he thinks or recalls that event. He ends up with seizures, and he's been in and out of the hospital. And this time he's been in the hospital for 2 years because his parents don't know how to handle him. And we also see Jimin associated with water at various times in the Hwayongyana content, such as the bathtub in I Need You and Run, and the waterfalls in Fake Love. He's also in water in the Japanese version of Run. So Taeyong and Namjoon walk along train tracks together, and Taeyong reveals he's been having a weird dream where Yoongi is trapped inside a fire and Jimin is drowning in water. Namjoon tells him that it's nonsense, and he asks if he wants to visit Hoseok. So Namjoon notices that there are bruises on the back of Taeyong's neck, but he doesn't say anything. Namjoon and Taeyong go to 2-Star Burger where Hoseok works, but they tell him he's in the hospital, so they go there instead to look for him. And at the hospital, Hoseok overhears some of the medical staff talking about Jimin's parents and how they forced him to be hospitalized. In the last scene, we see Seokjin sitting at the foot of the stairs at the hospital. So in episode 9, we see Seokjin thinking about how angry Yoongi was with him for not letting him die, and Seokjin wonders if he can even save Yoongi if it's against his will. So maybe there's no point, but he decides that he can't give up. Seokjin goes to find Yoongi in the hospital, but he's told that Yoongi was discharged last month. And the next scene shows Yoongi with Namjoon, Taeyang, and Jungkook at the hospital. Hoseok asks Jimin if he wants to see the others, but he refuses and asks Hoseok not to tell them that he's there. So Hoseok goes to visit the others alone, and Taeyang asks if Hoseok keeps in touch with Jimin, and he doesn't answer him. And Namjoon runs into Seokjin and asks if he's there to see Hoseok, and Seokjin is surprised to learn that Hoseok is even there. He had no idea. So the next day, Hoseok thinks he sees his own mother, so he goes after her. He starts to slip down the stairs, and in the Hwayoungyeona notes, we know that Hoseok's mom abandoned him when he was 7, and he lived in an orphanage until he aged out of the system at 19. There's also a Hwayoungyeona note from Answer where Hoseok nearly falls down the stairs going after this woman, but Jimin stops him from falling, and this note is dated May 12th, year 22. The scene cuts to Seokjin running into Jimin at the hospital, and then medical staff rush through the area with an injured patient. Seokjin sees that it's Hoseok lying there with a very injured ankle, having fallen down the stairs in this iteration of the timeline, and everything shatters once again. So Seokjin wakes up on April 11th again in episode 10. He's still determined to fix everything, and he tapes the photo from the beach that they took on June 12th to his rearview mirror and puts sticky notes of all the guys and their locations on his dashboard. Namjoon and Jungkook are checked off, leading us to believe that he's already saved them in this iteration of the timeline. On May 10th, he goes to the bridge that he knows Hoseok is going to collapse on. He catches him before he can injure himself, and he drives off. So Hoseok wakes up and is surprised to see him. He takes his medication for narcolepsy, and Seokjin asks him about it, but Hoseok doesn't really answer. And Hoseok asks to be dropped off at work, but he sees the sticky notes on Seokjin's dash before he gets out, but Seokjin won't answer him about what the sticky notes are for. So later, Hoseok meets up with Namjoon and tells him about how Seokjin showed up right at the exact time that he needed him, and it happened to Namjoon too, and they feel like something is off. So Hoseok gets on a scooter, and Namjoon warns him that those are dangerous, and this is probably a reference to Hwayoungyeona Book 1, where there's a note for Namjoon dated December 17th, year 21, and in that note, Namjoon recalls wrecking on a scooter in the wintertime, and how a boy in the village that he had moved to had died from crashing on a scooter, and so this probably explains why he brings it up to Hoseok. So as if it were foreshadowing, Hoseok nearly gets into a wreck on the scooter as he cuts across traffic to try and catch up with Seokjin, but he sent him a text, and Seokjin didn't answer him, and so he saw him and he just cut across traffic. And this leads into the beginning of episode 11, where Hoseok barely misses getting hit, and as Seokjin is driving, he sees Yoongi walking down the street. Yoongi goes into a motel with his lighter, and we see him light some more composition paper on fire. At a convenience store, Hoseok sees Seokjin drive by again, so he rushes out to follow him. He sees Seokjin carrying Yoongi out of the motel, which is already burning, and they rush Yoongi to the hospital. As the doctors are tending to him, Hoseok recalls those sticky notes, and he asks Seokjin if he knew that this was going to happen. He continues to question him, but Seokjin says that he can't explain right now, and Hoseok goes to the lobby to wait instead. So Hoseok thinks he sees Jimin in the hospital, but it turns out not to be him. He nearly slips on the stairs, but then Jimin actually shows up behind him and catches him, just like in the Hwayoungyeona note. They sit and talk, and Hoseok realizes that they haven't seen each other for 2 years, since that day that Jimin had a seizure at the bus stop, and Hoseok had taken him to the hospital. Jimin has actually been in the hospital the entire time, and Hoseok says he knows what it feels like for time to stop, because he's recalling in his own mind when his mother had abandoned him. So Hoseok asks Jimin if he wants to get out of the hospital, and Jimin struggles to answer him. So in episode 12, Namjoon gets a call at night from Hoseok, and he says that there's something going on. So then it cuts to Seokjin sitting at Yoongi's bedside, and he says he doesn't remember how many times he's lived through this time loop, but he says he won't stop trying. Seokjin runs up the stairs to find Jimin, but is instead met with Namjoon, Hoseok, and Taeyang as they come down the stairs with Jimin. They want to get him out of the hospital, but Seokjin is worried because he knows that the time loop is affected depending upon what actions he and the others take. So he's worried that he'll fail again, or that they'll get into a bigger accident. So Seokjin blocks their path, and Taeyang argues with him, and in the end he decides that he hasn't seen Jimin's final moments yet, like he has for some of the other guys, and he doesn't know why Jimin is in the hospital. So Hosuk tells Seokjin that Jimin's there because his parents have locked him up for 2 years, and that causes Seokjin to relent and move out of the way and let Jimin make his own decision about whether or not he wants to leave. So Jimin has a flashback to his mother leaving him in the hospital because she can't handle him, and Jimin seems to envision some sort of black substance around his feet, like it's graphically depicted in the webtoon, and he attempts to scratch it off in a tub full of water in this flashback, and it appears that he even damages his skin while trying to get this stuff off. And next, he's submerged in water again. He recalls the flower arboretum and the blood. He sees the black substance dripping off his body and then flashes back to the present. He sees it again around his feet, and he tells the others that he wants to leave. So they start to make a run for it, and they run into Jimin's mother. She makes him go back to the room and asks if those were the same kids from high school, and they fight about Jimin being in the hospital. Jimin yells at her that by locking him up, she's just locking him up because she's embarrassed about him, and that's not right. Jimin's mother slaps him and blames him for his seizures. She complains that it's rough for her and his father, and she leaves, and Jimin cries alone in his room. On May 12th, Seokjin is at the hospital when he hears medical staff are yelling for Jimin, and he's locked himself in the bathroom. They pry open the door, and Seokjin pushes past them to find Jimin in a tub full of water. It's likely that he was trying to drown himself, but Seokjin pulls him out in time. So episode 13 starts with Seokjin pulling Jimin out, and he's still alive. He asks Seokjin to get him out of the hospital. Seokjin makes a run for it and just puts him in the back of the truck. And while they drive, Jimin sees a sign for the flower arboretum again, and he freaks out. He jumps out of the car, and he runs towards a construction zone, and Seokjin wakes up again on April 11th, and the white cat is seen in his room. So Seokjin begins to really doubt that he can save everyone, so he sits in his room alone all day and night, and since he does nothing, April 11th starts over again. And this time, Taeyong shows up at Seokjin's door, and Seokjin is confused because Taeyong says he saw Seokjin in his dream, but didn't know that he would actually be there. And since time restarted again, none of them even are supposed to know that Seokjin is back. So that seems to give Seokjin the strength to carry on. And he acknowledges that if he does nothing, the cycle will never end. So Seokjin shows up at Namjoon's container with Jimin, and the other guys are already there. Namjoon offers to let Jimin stay there until he's ready to go back to his parents' house, and it looks like Seokjin has finally succeeded. He says they should go to the beach because that's, a connection to that June 12th photo they took before they all went their separate ways. So episode 14, we see scenes of them all playing around with sparklers and enjoying each other's company like we saw in the I Need You music video. And on May 20th, Taeyong comes out of the police department and goes home. He doesn't want to go in, but he does, and his dad is in a rage, yelling at him and slapping his sister. He flashes back to all the past abuse, and he's not able to watch it any longer. So he takes an alcohol bottle and he runs at his father. In the next scene, Taeyong cries as he looks at the blood on his hands and clothes, which we've also seen in the prologue video. Elsewhere, Namjoon and Seokjin talk about Jimin looking happier now, and Seokjin talks about Taeyong, and Namjoon says he missed a call from him and tried to call him back, but Taeyong didn't answer. Namjoon recalls the bruises on Taeyong and how he tends to hide his personal life, and this episode ends with Hosuk arriving saying that something has happened with Taeyong. So in the final episode, Seokjin rushes to the police station where there's a crowd of media around Taeyong, which mirrors that very first time we saw this happen earlier in the webtoon. And Seokjin pushes through the crowd, calls out to Taeyong, and everything shatters again. So Seokjin wakes up in his room again, realizing that he got careless and he wasn't able to save Taeyong, and he's determined not to fail again. So we jump forward again to May 20th, Taeyong coming out of the police station again. This time Seokjin is there, and he takes Taeyong home, and on the way asks him if anything is going on. But Taeyong won't answer him, and so Seokjin doesn't force him to talk, and instead tells him to talk when he's ready. Taeyong says he wants to talk about one thing, and that's the nightmare he has where Yoongi is trapped in a fire and Jungkook falls from a building. Hosuk has an accident, and Namjoon is in prison. He says that he has that dream every night, and Seokjin wonders how Taeyong remembers these things, because none of the other guys seem to remember anything. Taeyong knows he's in the dream too, but he can't remember what happens to himself. So Seokjin drops Taeyong off at home, and they can hear his dad yelling all the way from the outside. Taeyong runs off, and Seokjin follows him, and Taeyong hits his father with an alcohol bottle and is about to stab him when Seokjin bursts in. He grabs Taeyong and tries to stop him, but Taeyong pushes him off, and Seokjin tries again, and Taeyong tragically accidentally stabs Seokjin in the chest instead. Taeyong begins to cry as Seokjin is dying, and Seokjin is wondering if he finally succeeded or if he'd really die, and everything shatters once again. So Seokjin wakes up. It's April 11th once again, and he recalls the words spoken to him previously, where it said, "You won't make it out here alone in this entangled destiny." He realizes that he can't do it on his own, no matter how many times he tries to save everybody. So the webtoon ends with him looking at the photo that they took on June 12th at the beach, and the words, "Once again, just like before, together with you all." So that is the end of the webtoon. It doesn't really, give us a full resolution, but it does give us, a setup for the time loop and what keeps happening as Seokjin keeps going back in time and reliving April 11th over and over again. So just a bit of discussion now here at the end of the video. The story is pretty straightforward here. Having an understanding of the story will definitely help you with the Hwayangyeona notes, especially when you get to year 22. So even though Save Me was released after some of the Hwayangyeona notes, since it has that 0 in the logo, I do believe that this is the first string of events that happens in year 22. Basically, every note we have prior to April 11th in year 22 is static. So that's just a static storyline. Nothing has changed. As far as we know, none of that changed at all. And in the webtoon and in the notes, we get multiple repeat days as Seokjin tries to save them all. So time loops in narratives often operate on the idea that the character or characters involved will gain some sort of knowledge, and that will eventually allow them to get out of the loop. So we definitely see that with Seokjin here, and Taeyong does have those dreams that are actually true memories from previous iterations of the timeline, and he has even more of those dreams in the Hwayangyeona notes, and some of the notes lead me to believe that Taeyong eventually starts to figure it out. We don't know that for sure, we don't have enough information yet, but that seems to be what it's hinting at. It's possible that this story won't be fully resolved until they all work together to fix it somehow. So some other ideas that just kind of came to me as I was thinking about this story. The butterfly effect also seems to be at play here, because sometimes when Seokjin alters the timeline, like he alters the past, it changes the future events. It changes some of the future events that sometimes lead to character deaths. So for example, when he gets several of them into the car, he's trying to save them, but he ends up wrecking and killing everybody anyway, and he quickly learns that he can't know what will happen from his change in actions. He could end up saving everyone, or he could end up starting over because someone dies and they start over again on April 11th. So we also know that Seokjin can't die because he dies at the end of episode 15 when Taeyong accidentally stabs him, but that just takes him right back to April 11th, so he has to survive too. So back before we had so much information on this storyline, some people were theorizing that maybe Seokjin needed to die in order to save the others, or the rest of them would live and he would be the only one to die. But now we know that that's not going to work either, because if he dies, he just gets sent back to April 11th, so his death will not bring about any sort of resolution. So we still don't know much about the cat. Like I said earlier, we don't know really where it came from. We don't know how the time loop really works. And time travel is logically impossible, but it's often used in science fiction or fantasy to create interesting what if situations. And since it's widely used in various ways, it's possible that Big Hit, the creative team, has made up their own rules surrounding this time loop and the white cat. So we can't really know for sure until we get the full story, if we ever get the full story. I don't know that we're ever going to get the full story. But anyway, I don't think we're dealing with parallel universes or anything related to like the many worlds theory. I've not seen anything to indicate that that's, really where this time loop is going. It's a time loop used as a narrative device, and they're clearly living like in the same time loop, and there might even be multiple time loops, which we'll get into that later. But yeah, so I don't think there's parallel universes or many worlds, that sort of thing. So I also think it's interesting that we see a little bit of something called the Novikov self-consistency principle, and this principle basically states that the past cannot be altered, so even if someone goes back in time, they can't change the outcome of events. So sometimes this principle is applied in fiction. Stories that use this principle often have characters who try to go back in time and they try to go back into the past and change something, but they either fail or they end up causing the event to happen that they were actually trying to prevent. So an example of this is that fatal car crash where, Seokjin gathers up some of his friends, trying to prevent their deaths only to cause them. So even though we may see this principle in play sometimes in the story, I don't think that's the end game. I do believe eventually we're going to get a resolution that, doesn't leave anybody dead or miserable, locked up in jail, whatever the, bad situation might be. I don't think that's the end game. I think that's just part of the struggle, part of the, the narrative function of this story. So, yeah, that's that's my thoughts on this so far. But yeah, so that was a doozy of a video. My back is killing me. But yeah, anyway, I just sounded super old, didn't I? That is the end. I'm actually losing my voice. That is the end of the Save Me recap semi-discussion explanation. Again, like I said, I will link to the blog post in the description box. And the next video will cover the Hwangyana storyline from the notes up until where things start changing. So I think it would be good to divide the video into here's what happened prior to April 11th, year 22, and here's what happened April 11th, year 22, and on forward into the future for as long as we have. I don't remember what the last date is, in August something, but I don't remember exactly. But yeah, so those will be the next two videos and blog posts, and then I think there will be some videos that kind of just talk about various aspects, various things I can think of to sort of link stuff together or whatever. I don't really know yet. I haven't gotten that far. But anyway, yeah, so if you're interested, you can see more on the website or you can watch other videos, and hopefully the next one will come a lot faster than this one did. So, but yeah, if you watched this whole thing, thank you so much for watching, and I will be back soon.